Welcome to True Wellness with Dr. D, the podcast where we explore what it takes to live with vitality, balance, and purpose. I am Dr. D, and each week I'll bring you powerful tools, inspiring stories, and expert insights to help you thrive in every area of your life. From health and wellness to mindset and navigating life's challenges, this podcast is your guide to creating a life of true well-being. Be sure to check the show notes and grab your free copy of the True Wellness Checklist so you can get started on your journey to true wellness right away. Now, let's get started. Okay, if you've ever wondered, why does my body react like this? Or why can't I regulate? Or why does my metabolism feel stuck? Today's conversation is going to crack that code right open because today's episode dives into emotional biohacking, nervous system mastery, and of course, the hidden link between our hormones, our metabolism, our emotional regulation, and also this thing called human design. So I am really excited today to be joined by Akary Busto, who is an emotional biohacker, a nervous system strategist, and someone that helps people really finally understand their physiology on, a cellular level, an emotional level, and an energetic level. Right. And as you all know, the energy is really important to me. So as the founder of Akary Mind, Body, Soul, Akary blends human design, breath work, and that, metabolic education along with the heart brain coherence that's essential for women being able to regulate their hormones and communicate through their nervous system. So if you've been dealing with burnout or inflammation or weight struggles or emotional reactivity, moral failures, it's the misaligned biology takes place right there. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited, really excited to have this conversation. And everyone, we were chatting a little bit beforehand and we were talking about my human design. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to cover this. Everyone is going to love it. So thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to speak about the things that I absolutely love and have a lot of passion for.
Yes. So let's dive right in. I mean, you call yourself an emotional biohacker. I know biohacking is a big buzzword today and everyone's thinking about jumping into a cold plunge or having a sauna or something, but what does that really mean to you, right? And what kind of woke you up to this work?
Well, I think there's a commonality that happens with a lot of women's stories, and it all sometimes starts with burnout. And understanding how to navigate that is really difficult because when you experience really deep burnout, you don't understand what's happening in your physiology. You don't understand what's happening outside of you because we're so used to being validated from the outside in and not taking that moment to really tap into you and what is happening within you, what's happening in your biology that's creating that lack of resiliency.
Yeah.
And so when we're emotional biohacking, that's essentially what we're doing. Everyone's unique. So
Yeah.
what works for me may not work for you. However, if we get curious, we can figure it all out.
I love that. A lot of our listeners are, they're successful, they're educated, they're executive women, they're out there, they're doing things. And yet, I know with my clients, they're underneath it all, right? Underneath the outside facade, they are tired, they are exhausted, they are frustrated, they all feel like their hormones are out of balance and they feel stuck, And I know you say a lot that hormones aren't just chemicals, right? They're actually that communication network. It's the way that everything communicates in the body. So how does the emotional biohacking actually begin to shift the way that a woman can understand her body?
I think when we look at hormones as symptoms of a dysregulated nervous system,
Yes.
right? When we look at them as symptoms of a dysregulated nervous system, then we start putting all the pieces together because in general, we may not be aware of this, but having so much cortisol in our bodies for
Mm.
long periods of time, and I'm talking about years and years and years, is
Yes.
not a sustainable way for women to live. You
Yes.
know, if we go back to hunters and gatherers, we did hunt. Yeah, we hunted with because we all have to hunt, right?
Right.
But that wasn't what we did the most of. We gathered. We hunted and we gathered.
Yes.
And when we're out there in the corporate world working alongside with men, we just can't sustain it 100% of the time. We have to find ways of developing healthy coping mechanisms so that we're not operating from a high cortisol space, which is already very difficult. We're
Mhm.
juggling family, we're juggling life, careers, people, emotions. Like we're doing so many different things and we don't realize it because that's our baseline.
Yes. Yes. And it's funny. I'm gonna tell on myself a little bit here, but like I've done a lot of like personal development and all that. I've like years, decades upon decades, and I dive deep into things that just kind of it's my personality, which we'll talk about that, right? But um you can even what I find is that I will secretly still be doing all that stuff on like that, like not paying attention to the burnout because I will find ways to justify it. So it's almost like
Mm.
we are really good about manipulating in our minds what we are and aren't doing. But the key is your body always tells you, right? Your body is always like, hey, wait a second, this is a no-go. There's a misalignment here. So I know you teach that emotions, they are physiological, right? And they're not just personal failure. So kind of using that as an example or something else, can you break down like what exactly that means inside the body?
Well, before we get that, I wanna address the fact that our brains are wired for survival.
Oh yes.
And
Yes.
because our brains are wired for survival, we have these neural pathways that I call like little muscles all around our
Yes.
that have been reinforced over time. And if we don't develop these healthy habits, then what happens is that it reinforces the unhealthy habits. So, what you're talking about is I continue to go the other direction. And that's just because, you're on autopilot.
Yes.
And so, my work really is right there. It starts right there where we try to disrupt these neural pathways by creating disruptions through your breath cycle,
Yeah.
through connecting to your body and understanding that it's okay, I did it today. And so one of the big things that I like to teach, especially with emotional disruptions, because we snap, right? We get really triggered because of something. And I try to explain to people it is not a bad thing to have those triggers because we go into these shame loops. I should have known. I've been, and
Right.
the thing that helps us have more compassion for these kind of episodes is to write down, when was the last time I experienced this? Oh, okay, it was December.
Yes.
And then the next time it happens, you got to go back and say, I mean, that's the excitement part of me, right? The data girl is like,
Yes.
when did this last happen? Oh my God, this last happened in March. So it's
Mhm.
been since March since my body has experienced this trigger as danger.
Right.
So this is really cool. I've been doing a really good job of disrupting.
I love that.
You
Just reframing it to see like, okay, it's not, we've had conversations on the podcast before, so some of our listeners will recognize. Sometimes we talk about like there's the gap and the gain. It's another great book that I'm sure some of these women have listened to, but where we're focusing on like, okay, how far have we come versus how far there is to go? Because
Yeah.
typically, if you're a high achieving woman, right, that how where do we have to go? You just keep pushing it further and further out.
Well, we're perfectionists, right? I mean, when we're in high achieving
Mhm.
careers,
Yes.
there's the pressure to always show up in our perfectionism.
Mhm.
we cannot show any vulnerable part of ourselves because we get run over. I mean, it's not safe, right? It's like you can't win. If you show up vulnerable, you get run over. And if you don't, you get run over. So we have to have this happy medium.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure.
Yes.
But on the, and that's like what you present on the outside. I like to call that genuine self. But authentically, when I'm in my safe place, these are the reflections that I really need to step into. And when was the last time that I showed up that way? And having more compassion so that when you are in your genuine self, where you have to show up for a team or whatnot, that you can start to shift, because I do believe that the professional and the personal are really close tied together. And
Sure.
how we show up for ourselves privately is how we show up for ourselves publicly. And
Sure.
so giving yourself permission to do that in a genuine space, not authentically, because we're not going to have a meltdown, right? We need your genuine self who can do the things that you are here to do, right?
Right.
So I think really finding that little balance around where I can come in and feel safe and process and back out and show up is important.
Yes. Well, let's talk about that, right? Because some of that lack of safety creates those stress hormones, right? Like cortisol.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then it's the inflammation that follows it, the weight resistance, the emotional volatility, right? Those outbursts, like you were saying. But how do they operate? Sometimes people are like, but I'm doing all the things right. How can
Mm.
it seem like we're doing all the things right? And yet those like that cortisol is still running amok, still doing all of that inside, which we can't see. I think we can feel it, but we can't see it, but we feel it.
It's stealing the show, right? It's definitely stealing the show. When we don't have data,
Mhm.
we're running blindly. If you can't test it, you can't fix it.
Yes. I love that. Yep.
And that's a big piece. My philosophy is mind, body, soul. And I
Mm.
focus on the body because the mind and the soul cannot be aligned if the body's not in balance.
Yes. Yeah. It's that survival. Go back to like Maslow's hierarchy, right? If
Yeah,
we're just trying to survive, nothing else
it's gonna be
literally
aligned.
matters.
No, and so that's where we really have to talk about the testing and
Mhm.
what's happening internally, because yeah, maybe the cortisol is high. But when that cortisol has been high since childhood, for example, because
Yes.
some of us are we're parentified, right? And I feel like I'm not speaking just for myself, that when we are parentified, we end up being high achieving women.
Right.
We
Right.
take care of everyone, and it feels like it's a nervous system response of survival.
Yes.
So I think testing is the first step to make sure that not only have we been running on cortisol, but maybe our insulin resistance is also high. And with that insulin resistance comes a whole other slew of things, including anxiety,
Yes.
cravings,
Yes.
that visceral fat around the belly that just won't leave. It's all
Yes.
nervous system related, believe it or not.
Yes.
But we can't address it if we're not testing.
Yeah. I like what you say too, because testing means multiple different things, right? It's not just like blood work is really important. I know one of the things we do in our practice too, we use a lot of kinesiologic testing, but there's also what you just said before, like paying attention, like actually my one of my staff members and I, we were having this conversation yesterday. It's like each of us are our N of one. And when we're looking to progress in our health or our emotional well being or something, we've got to start really tuning in and paying attention. So, like what you just said was brilliant. You're like, okay, I just had a meltdown. When was the last time I had that meltdown? That reflection is part of collecting that data.
Yeah, and I think, leadership is emotional coherence.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
really is, because we're tested from the outside world constantly mirroring at us whether we're doing it right or we're not doing it right. And
Yes.
those are very big emotional triggers for us.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you have another interesting part, which is human design that you bring in. So you've got like where human design meets biology. And I know some of our listeners are like, human design, what the heck are that? Others are like, oh, wow, that's like way mystical. But it's really not, right? Because you can actually use it to explain physiology. So how do you bridge those worlds, without losing the science? How do you bridge human design and biology? How do they interact?
Well, my work is very foundational, and I love to start from the bottom up to get to that root cause of things.
Yes.
And so what the human design chart allows me to do is it allows me to see where your strengths are and where the weaknesses are, and how we get hooked into these loops and why we get hooked into these loops.
Yes.
There's a beautiful piece of human design that allows us who we are and what we're here to do with our lives. And so it's almost like an energetic blueprint of n equals 1. Exactly, that is
Yes.
experimenting. So human design is an experiment, and it allows you to experiment with, certain, not rules, but just suggestions on things. So for example, I'm a generator, you're a manifesting generator. There's
Yes.
a thing called authority. Do you know what your authority is?
Do I know what my authority is? I know I was just looking up I just looked up my numbers for you. What is my authority? Oh, I don't see it on here. Oh, inner authority. Sorry, sacral.
Sacral. Okay, so that's beautiful. So that is a visceral or
Hmm.
So
Yes,
we are the people that respond to life with, oh, let's do it.
right.
So if I say, Dr. D, let's go have lunch, you're like, let's go. And then I say, what do you want to eat? And you're like, oh, like, so many choices. And so we need to be asked a certain way. And so what I teach women to do as well is to invite themselves into conversations. Do you have the bandwidth to have a feedback session? Someone could say, but how appreciative is that person that they're being invited
Yeah,
within that parameter? Is like, do you have the bandwidth? Can we
yeah.
have a feedback session? Can we and learning how to speak this way, it
Mhm.
doesn't matter who you are and what type you are, it gives you an opportunity to tap inside and be
Yeah.
like, and people who are splenic are like, nope. And you and I would be like, "Okay, well, let me feel into my body."
Yes.
And it's either a heck yes or a heck no.
Yes. My whole TEDx talk is about, feeling into your body, listening. It's literally listen is the acronym that I teach in that talk. And that is exactly what it is. So I know some people are like right now, and we should probably take a step back. They're like, human design, what can you explain what human design is?
Yes, let's go into the nitty-gritty. So, it is a system made out of 5 other systems, because it's not complicated enough. So we have a lot of esoteric behind. So we have the I Ching, which is the book of wisdom for the Chinese, 3,000 years old. Then we have the Tree of Life, which is part of the Kabbalah, Judaism,
Yes.
3,000 years old. Then
Mhm.
we have Eastern and Western astrology, 3,000 years old. And then we add the Hindu chakra system,
Yes.
another very old system. And then to make things even more complicated, let's just add a sprinkle of quantum science, right? Quantum physics. And so we bring all of that together and boom, we have this human design. And through the human design, it's evolved over the years. Basically, we have neutrinos coming from the solar flares, so the sun, and it actually comes in and influences a lot of our behavior,
Yes.
which is how we see generations. And I
Yep.
think that that's a really fantastic way of looking at things, because we're like, oh, baby boomers. And then, oh, look, Generation X. Oh, look at these, right? And so we're grouping these generations together, and they have a lot of things that are very much alike and obviously things that are different. But it is through these neutrinos that we start to look at our biology,
Mhm.
and we can dive in and see why, right? And I'm one of those people through my human design chart that is very curious. And so it's been really expansive to look at the chart and be able to teach people what it means when one of the chakras is defined and when it is open, because that energy expresses itself differently. And one of the ways that I like to explain that is, think about walking into a room and it's full of people you don't know. And you
Yes.
walk into this room and immediately you go, "Ugh, I don't really like that person." And you've never met that
You
person.
don't know why. Right. It just,
And so then you end up finding out you're sitting together at the table and all of a sudden you start chatting and you leave that meeting with a best friend.
yeah.
And so we feel each other's energy even though we're not showing up in that energy.
Mm.
And so human design allows us to taste each other's energy, and either we're amplifying that energy or we are broadcasting that energy.
Yes.
And so because it's broadcasting and amplifying, one of my favorite things that you're sacral, I'm sacral. But if someone is emotional in the room, it means that they're so comfortable feeling their waves of emotions all the time. Well, I'm not.
Right.
So if there's a drama queen in the room, it's going to be me. I'm the one who's going to be crying at a sad movie for days.
yes. Yes.
Okay, because I don't process emotions that way. I'm amplifying whoever's there and their emotion, and I feel it. So if
Yeah.
someone's mad, I feel like they're angry.
Yes.
If someone's sad, I'm like they're depressed.
Right.
And
Right.
so it gives me so much information about myself and how I guess, project some of these energies out there.
Right. So give us an example. So our listeners can understand how the interplay is specifically with their biology.
With their biology, how it connects is, we have life cycles in the human design. And so what a life cycle means is, when these certain planets come back into orbit at that point from where you were born. So the first one is your Saturn return cycle. And that comes in around 28 to about 32. And it's like all that energy. And if you know anything about astrology or even Greek mythology, you know that like Saturn is like the king, the ruler. It doesn't ask questions, and it definitely doesn't ask for permission.
Yeah.
So when you think about where you were at, or where you are at in your life cycle right now, and you go back to that period of time being around 28 and 30 and 32, and the challenges that you're discovering. When I look back, I'm thinking, ooh, starting a career, becoming, going into the
Right.
corporate world, starting a family,
Yeah.
all of this new responsibility. And if you're not in your life and soul purpose, it's
Mm.
going to test you.
Yes.
And as a manifesting generator, you would know how that feels, because you're also a profile line 6, which means that you were born with your hair on fire. So you're trying all the things all the time, especially in those years where there's less responsibility, but you feel this big sense of responsibility.
Right. Well,
And
I haven't had any years yet where there isn't a lot of responsibility.
for sure. But that's our trauma, right? That's the story behind that fuels our narrative.
Right.
So we're talking here like that life cycle in particular, because now you've had several other life cycles, and so you get to have more wisdom from that. So that first Saturn return, that's what it looks like. The second one that we look at is the Uranus opposition, which means that the planet Uranus is directly opposite from where it was when you were born. What
Okay.
does that mean? Well, the planet Uranus is all about transformation. So if we look at the time period, we're looking at that time between 38 and 42.
Okay.
And we're looking at what's happening metabolically, right? Like if you have not been doing well with your food intake, because a lot of us, we're arrogant, we're human, we think we're doing it right. And sometimes we're not open. And
Right.
that's also where human design comes in. If your third eye, that center, that chakra center is defined, you have fixed beliefs. And your job is to be much more open minded, because and we see it in our daily lives. That's why we have polarity. Those people that believe this one thing is the only thing that's going to work,
Right.
or this one thing, and it's like polar opposites, right? And it doesn't allow us to grow, and it doesn't allow us to flow. And
Mhm.
then there's people like myself that I go, oh my God, there's all of these different ways of doing that, very excited. And so it really helps with this transformation space of looking at it from that nervous system lens of going, what is happening in my body?
Right.
We're entering the cycle of 40, And either A, some of us have already had children and are experiencing different things, and our
Yes.
coping mechanisms have shifted depending on our trauma.
Right.
And they
Right.
can either be good or bad, right? No
Mhm.
judgment. And then we have the other way where some women are barely starting to have a family, where they're like, oh, before it gets too late, let me have this womanly experience of
Yes.
childbirth. And
Yes.
so we have two different lens, but that brings in its own trouble, its own lens of things that are happening. And more, I really do believe that insulin resistance is the culprit of having fertility issues.
Mm.
And
Sure.
I also believe that when we're pregnant, our insulin, obviously has to go up. And so it causes a lot of disruption. So
Right.
this is the place where I call this the baseline. This
Yeah.
is where I always recommend women to go and get a DEXA scan, to go check her bone density, because
Right.
by the time you're 50, 60, you've already lost.
Sure.
So very, very weary about this beautiful age, but nobody tells us this. Nobody shares that physiology and what's going on by and in our cells.
Sure. Well, from the functional medicine perspective, right? It's like most science data and research is based on men. And
Yeah,
so we come into the space and women are now in this, this is a perimenopausal period, that age range. And they're like, what the heck is going on? And then they go to a conventional doctor and the doctor's like, well, this is just part of the way it's going to be for you. Like, get over it and keep moving, or
right.
here's your prescription. And women leave and they're like, what just happened, and why am I more confused than when I walked into this appointment?
Right,
That's
right.
that's an issue.
It is. And so then the women who listened, the women who were at the right place at the right time, the women who listen to your podcast that are taking notes and being more assertive with their health, being
Yeah.
empowered,
Yes.
get to have a different transition
Mm,
in the next wave. And
mm,
so the next wave starts around 48 to 52.
mhm.
And it is also a really difficult transition for many women, because this is when transgressions happen. There's a betrayal that was discovered that had been hiding, empty nesting,
Right.
just a lot of different shifts. And so in this time period, we're also starting menopause.
Yes.
And that perimenopausal period can become a little more intense. The anxiety, the not sleeping, the hot flashes, right?
Yes.
All of these like warning lights that are going on. Um, and a whole new way of healing has to come through.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
if you didn't even tap into, talk therapy, if you didn't tap into any of that, this is where it starts to kind of present itself, because of
Right.
all of these emotional triggers that are coming through these hot flashes. And so I think that space is what we've all needed. And so, like I said, if you have been a person that has been curious about your mental health and all of these things, it doesn't have to be such an aggressive.
Aggressive.
But that's not true for all of us. We're not at the right place at the right time 100% of the time. But if you're here now, well, yay you, because now you have an opportunity to shift these experiences.
Sure. Again,
So
it's awareness, right? It's the awareness, like, oh, okay, maybe there's a different piece here.
yeah. And then, so this Chiron return, we call this the wounded healer. And
Yes.
so it forces us to find new ways of healing, of transforming that energy that is weighing us down.
Yes.
And then that last cycle, we call this not the first, but the second Saturn return. And for women, it's almost like that last, like, hurrah, like this opportunity for you to tap into what your life and soul purpose really is. And you just never listened. You never tapped in to listen. You weren't guided. You
Yes.
weren't listening. You weren't aware. And so this is a beautiful point where, if there are health issues, you definitely want to tap into that last, resource of energy that you still have, to make sure that the next 20 years of your life are much more gratifying, because women are living longer, but we're also living longer in dementia.
Yes.
And all of that is inflammation of the brain. So when we start to address inflammation, I think that that is like the big thing. That is why insulin resistance is so important in my vocabulary. That's why metabolic resets are so important.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's how I tie in the biology with the life cycles. And as I was talking to you earlier, this is why it's really difficult for me to want to just address perimenopause or menopause,
Right.
because if we don't understand where we went wrong to begin with,
Yes.
then we can't shift.
Yes.
And we can't help the women around us to shift, to be like, oh my God, guess what I just learned? And you're 28. This is where, your life can pivot.
I don't know. My daughter's going to turn 20 soon. And we drip information. She's heard information her whole life, but now it's more like we got to drip things strategically. And still she's like, oh, yeah, okay, mom. But I know it gets heard. Like at some level, it gets heard, right? Because
I
later
have to tell you, I have a 24-year-old.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
And what I know is there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom.
Yes.
And so as they are going through their life and having these experiences, because they've heard it before, this is where the embodiment happens. This is when the aha moment goes, that little light turns on where
Yes.
that's what she was saying.
Yes.
So there is hope. And honestly, I think because of that awareness, it allows them to be so much more empowered, so much more vocal, so much more just in their power and in their awareness, where they are able to help other women around them as they're getting older and they're watching things happen around them and knowing that they don't have to experience those same things.
Yeah, I love that.
That's powerful.
Very, very powerful. And that's why we have these kinds of conversations, because it's about getting the information out there for people to just to start to get exposed to, right? And if it resonates, then you dive in and you learn more, and it can be what it's right for you.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, right, I start to think about coherence at that point. And I know that you talk a lot about coherence. I talk a lot about bioenergetic coherence on so many different levels. And I know that you talk especially about heart brain coherence. And, how does a woman begin to really start to create that internal coherence?
Like everything, it takes practice because, again, we have created autopilots for ourselves that have just survival mechanisms.
Mm.
And we have so much information about old lineages connecting to the heart. Everything connects to that heart. And in modern world, we've lost a lot of that tradition.
Right.
So what we do is go back to the basics and go back to that space, that heart space.
Mhm.
So we know that the brain is where we survive,
Yes.
but the right decisions come from the heart.
Yes. Mhm.
So if I am going to make a logical decision, I have to ask myself, is that coming from fear?
Right.
Or is that really an aligned choice that I'm making for my highest and best interest?
Mhm.
Right? And 9 times out of 10, it's to protect ourselves.
Yeah, that's a super powerful question. So I'm just gonna repeat it so nobody misses it, right? But so the question was, am I coming from a place of fear, or is it really aligned with my highest and best interest? And I think today, and our world it's an interesting world we live in today, right? But there's so much fear in all these different in every aspect. There's fear just coming at us on social media and the news and like everything. You would think everything is crumbling and like we're doomed in this moment. And how how do you guide a woman through that period where they can say, okay, like what are practices they can do to move out of that space of fear or overwhelm or dysregulation?
So it takes practice to connect into the heart. So I always guide everyone to just connect to the heart. And I make this really simple is imagine you're standing at the grocery store and someone's child is crying and someone is bickering with the register, right? Like whatever that situation could be. And you're standing there and you're just like, I just want to get out.
Yes.
Connecting into your heart allows you to pause, allows you to go inside, right? Because we tend to be shallow breathers, and we also tend to hold our breaths a lot.
Yes.
And women who have experienced a lot of trauma, we don't have that awareness of doing that deep belly breath. It doesn't feel very comfortable. So really is tapping into that space of not being comfortable and being okay with it so that it can become comfortable.
Yes.
So tapping into, your belly and your heart.
Yes.
And just breathing in and allowing, I mean, immediately, you just lower your shoulders, everything kind of deepens. A really quick trick that I do is I try to find joy in things. And
Yeah.
so when I'm super triggered, you're not going to get me into joy. So first, I neutralize my emotions, right? I tap into my heart and I'm just like neutralizing all of that. And then I like to think about things that bring me joy, like fat, chubby babies giggling, right? Like,
that brings everybody joy. Oh my gosh, yes.
right? Or imagining puppies with their little floppy ears playing with kitty cats, or like the horse with the cat, the horse with the
Right.
dog, like these little variations of things that bring me joy.
Yes.
Snap me out of it, because literally negative emotions are the ones that are impacting your heart.
Yes. I
And
love
if you just change that, if you reframe that, it's not like your heart's going to beat any less. It's
Yeah,
the emotion that carries that energy.
I love that. And I want to point out, because a lot of our listeners, they are only listening through audio, but what you can't see is she is putting her hand on her heart and her other hand on her belly. And I know this is such a powerful, we do this in a lot of our courses and programs, like whatever, exercise or thing we're doing. It's okay, hands on your heart, hand on your belly. And there's right there, you're grounding all of it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think that that is the easiest way that you can bring yourself to that neutral zone that you need, because the heart literally gets a pounding every time you're sitting in that negative emotion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm a data girl. Again, I love the science. And so my clients get a biofeedback sensor that
Mhm.
connects to, their ear, and they can see their nervous system live,
Mhm.
because what we think is calm is
Yeah,
not always calm. There's always calm below it.
exactly. Yes. Yeah. Monitoring that. I'm assuming you are too, but I'm a huge fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, right? And that, the coherence with the heart and the mind, and that, that state that we can bring ourselves to when we pay attention to those areas. It's profound.
Yeah, the work that he does is associated with the Hard Math Institute.
Yes.
And so
Mhm.
that's really that's been the anchor of all of my work, is the way I shift baselines
Yeah.
is through this coherence, because we're disrupting patterns.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so powerful. So when I had a physical office location, one of the services that we provided was neurofeedback. And
Mm,
before every neurofeedback session, right, we made sure that coherence, we did the M wave, and that coherence was established before moving in to like that next phase of healing,
yeah.
because it makes a difference, because it makes a profound difference. So whether you're just kind of doing something to do something and maybe you get some sort of short-term return, or you're doing something and your body's in that state where it's prepared to accept change and actually shift in an
Yes. Yes, and that to me that to me is the magic sauce of transformation.
yes,
So
yeah,
I can tell you all about your human design, but if your nervous system is not in a space of receptivity, then we're not moving anywhere.
right. You
I
can't even hear
you
it.
understand, right, you cannot.
The filters are so big and strong. Nothing's getting through. They're all clogged
Right.
and congested.
So once you understand that the nervous system is your point of entrance, the rest just is so much easier to go through.
Yeah,
And the initiation that work that I do with human design is because our shadow self is always the loudest.
right.
but it's not the highest expression of who you can be. So when we clear all of the debris, we start looking at the symptoms and addressing the symptoms,
Mhm.
then you're so much more open to receiving the magic of who you are and allowing yourself to express that. And
Yes.
I'm not saying you're going to quit your job or quit your career, or maybe you are, but there are so many ways for us to be of service,
Mm.
and you get to experiment with it and see how that works for you.
Yes. Yeah. It's fun. We get to play in the
Mhm.
space of life is the way I like to say it. Let's let's talk about let's talk about that connection between this emotional safety, this emotional regulation, and that metabolic restoration that you spoke about earlier. What is the connection between those two?
Well, it goes right back, there's symptoms. There's symptoms of a dysregulated nervous system. And so if we do not address them,
Mhm.
we are going to stay stuck in trauma loops, and we're not going to go through a transformation because our bodies are not healthy.
Right.
And it's so interesting. I have so many women who gaslight themselves to think, oh, no, I'm okay. I'm fine. I have
Right.
women who haven't done blood, they haven't done blood work in years.
Right.
And so when they hear me say it, they they're like, what do I have to do? What does that have anything to do with my nervous system? And
Right.
so that becomes a moment of education, awareness, because our metabolic system really runs the show, and it can create so much havoc in the future. And my work is foundational, and I am a very, very root cause focused person.
Yes.
And I think that's the root cause for so many of us because of our own childhood uh, trauma. We can say childhood trauma or emotional wounds, right? Our emotional wounds that we carry.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the way you take that perspective because it's funny, we throw around the word functional medicine, we throw around the word root cause, and the big piece there, like you said, is that emotional piece, is that trauma piece, because if we don't understand that, then we don't understand how all the other pieces fit together.
Well, and we have to understand when we're little,
Mhm.
sometimes we're even nonverbal,
Sure.
and we're trying to find safety. If our parents didn't establish safety for us, or if the way that they established safety for us didn't really feel safe,
Right.
that's going to be what's running the show.
Yes.
If people pleasing is the only way that feels safe, that's going to continue through our whole life.
Right.
If it's doing instead of being,
Right.
that's also
I'm a doing machine, right? It's
well,
in my human design.
you and I are generators, we're two different types of generators, but that's really what fuels us is the doing. And it's understanding there's nothing wrong with us doing, but there's also nothing wrong with us resting.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that because I do think that people that are most attracted to listening to this probably are also on that doing side.
Mhm.
And so, I know a lot of the clients that come to me, and I'm sure this is the same with you, like they're in that space of burnout. And
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of myths around burnout. And those myths, I think they keep women trapped in like shame or self-blame. Like, how do they start to debunk those myths? How do they start to step away from it so that they can have a different experience of life?
I mean, that's a very layered question because I think it's going to show up very different because our experiences are all different and valid.
Yeah.
But it is getting clear with your story. What
Mm,
is your story? What was that like? What was your relationship with your parents like? What was your relationship with mom? What was your relationship with dad? Was dad around, right? Like we talk about all of these different like basic things. I think growing up, for example, my father wasn't in the picture and my stepfather was present but not emotionally there.
right.
So still absent father figure. And
Yeah.
so when we look at how that affects us, then we're looking for validation outside of us from the men around us.
Right.
And that creates these belief systems. And so if there wasn't a father around and your mother, like mine was, who's also a manifesting generator, was doing it all by herself,
Right.
then that's my belief. My belief is that we as women, we do it all.
Right.
And then the other belief that I took on was, yeah, dads are duds.
There you go.
Who needs a dad? And
Uh-huh.
so I was very, very happy to be a single mom because then I didn't have to compromise.
Right.
I was so happy because I didn't have to, say, "Hey, what do you think?" Or no, this she was going to wear what she was going to wear and she was going to be what she was going to be, and it brought me a lot of joy. And as I started to wisen up and look around, she was going to have the same experience as I did.
Mm.
So it became very important for her to develop her relationship with her father. And then my partner came in. It was very important for me to have a partner that was going to be present. And
Right.
so she's been very fortunate to have two good, solid people in her life that she can lean into. So
Yeah.
that's just an example of my life experience and her life experience, and what wisdom starts to come up when you
Right.
realize that just because it was my life experience doesn't mean it has to be my child's.
Yes, I love that. And I think, I think what you're highlighting here too is how we do. So going back to like the assessing, we do need to kind of like stop, freeze, pause, and recognize, okay, where are these patterns coming from? How are they keeping us safe, right? We've adopted them for some specific reason. And when we do that, I believe, you can tell me what your thoughts are. I believe that that is kind of where we get to decide that there's a choice and we can choose which pathway we want to take.
Yeah, and we have a choice at every stage, at every cycle. We
Mhm.
just sometimes don't know that we have a choice. We're like that elephant, right? That elephant that has a rope around its leg and it's tied to a chair.
Mm, yes. Yeah, the elephant thinks it can't go anywhere, but really it's a tiny little chair.
Yes, and it's stuck. And that's when we listen to our heart, because think about those moments where you feel very powerless, where you feel like you don't know which way to go.
Yeah.
And that's like the brain telling you, like, you can't. You
Yes.
can't. And yet your heart hurts and aches because you're looking, searching for an answer, and it's here. It's telling you. It's
Yes.
really telling you. So developing that relationship with your heart to know what it is that you should be doing next, because sometimes what we're afraid of is really the place that we need to start experimenting with.
Isn't that funny? Thank you, God. Thank you, universe. Thanks
we
for letting us dive into that raw area.
and we have that, this is our compass, and we don't use
Yes.
it because who does it benefit?
Yes.
If we listen to ourselves, who does it really benefit?
Right.
Me. And
Yeah.
it may not benefit anyone else because you have all of these people that are standing over your shoulders on a free ride.
Mhm. Mhm.
Everyone's like on a Disneyland ride, whee, and you're the one carrying everyone.
Yeah, and that's why we get tired, right? That's why we get burnt out. That's why we end up in this space sometimes. So, what do you think? What's like a tool that you wish every woman understood about her nervous system by the time she turns 40?
By the time she turns 40, I wish that she would understand exactly that she is not the one who has to carry it all and do it all. And I have a really difficult time conveying that because we're so conditioned to believe that this is what we were meant to be, the be all, the do all, the emotional labor that we have to carry.
Yes.
It is so ingrained in us, and I've shifted in the way that I look at this part of who we are,
Sure.
from being like this past life thing
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
actually being that DNA thing. And so when we talk about reflecting, it's like trauma travels through the DNA.
Yes.
So how is that showing up in my life today?
Mhm.
That
Mm.
is the reflection that I walk women through, is what is my life story? What was my grandmother's life story? What was that sort? Because when we look backwards, I mean, we have it a lot easier than our mothers did.
Sure.
And our
Mhm.
mothers had it a lot easier than our grandmothers did.
Yes.
And we continue to go backwards, but then we can also look at what those stories had. I had a client who was based out of India, and her grandfather had passed away, which meant that her grandmother had to basically beg for food. And she had issues with food. She felt FOMO. She felt like she had to try everything that was out there because
Sure.
and it was a very challenging question. Like, wow, look at that energy and how it's showing up in your life.
Yeah.
And we did that through what we call a family constellation, which is a whole other topic. But
Right.
it brought up all of this awareness. And where there's awareness, it precedes change. And so that was an opportunity for her to investigate further and take that deeper as a part of her own healing journey.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And it's, it is, we are the N of one, and each of our journeys are so different. And it's important to take that time to reflect and to dive. And I love the work that you do. So if a woman is feeling inflamed or exhausted, reactive, not herself, like, where should she begin?
It's the most difficult piece for her, but sometimes just taking a pause, if she can take a pause. We do not take leaves of absences serious enough in our world, in our country, and we have that available. Not enough of us understand that we can take a leave of absence from
Right,
work.
right,
And granted, it doesn't come with like your salary paid or whatever,
right.
but if you can set yourself up to win, that pause can be what changes and saves your life. Because one of the things that happens with successful women is that we pour so much into our identity as
Mm,
that successful career woman
right.
that we don't realize that if we're not addressing the metabolic issues that we have, worst case scenario, and I know it sounds really bold, but worst case scenario is you don't die.
Right. Let's have you repeat that so they can hear that again. The worst case scenario is you don't die
Yeah.
because you're left with,
Chronic illness for the rest of your life,
yes,
whether it's heart disease, and that's something that hasn't been researched enough for women, and heart attacks are not dramatic like they are for men, so we don't even know if we're having a stroke.
yes. We're
And
just
that inflammation, along with the lack of hormones in our bodies,
Mhm,
means that our brain, our
mhm,
heart, our
mhm.
metabolic system, our bones, and our muscle
Yeah.
are at danger.
Yes.
So when we are going through these life cycles and we are putting on our trauma goggles and not deciding to take them off to take a look at what's going on under the hood, we are putting the rest of our lives at risk.
Yes.
That is as bold as it can get.
Well, it's not just bold, it's actually real, right? Because I think we sugarcoat these things. And I think a lot of people don't recognize the urgency. It's like, oh, tomorrow, tomorrow. And tomorrow comes and it's tomorrow and it's tomorrow and it's tomorrow. And yet your body's kind of throwing up these little flares like, hey, I need help. And then maybe it gets a little bigger. Hey, I need help. And eventually, your body's like throwing a couple pebbles at you. And now here comes the boulder, right? And if you don't do something fast, like there's a building that's going to fall on your head and you're done, you
And
know?
that's what burnout really is. It's your nervous system that cannot continue on that same path. And how often do we gaslight ourselves
Hmm.
and say it's nothing, it's fine, I don't need to look at this. And so, yeah, that's what I would say is the start of everything is take a leave of absence.
Yes.
Focus, even if it's 6 weeks, dive into, because we blame it on our employer, we blame it on our office, we blame it on the people that we work with, but really there's a lack of resiliency happening inside because there's a nervous system issue. And all of those are symptoms of a dysregulated nervous system.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny. I had a conversation with a client this morning. She's a new client and she's starting on her journey. And we were having this conversation about sometimes, in the beginning, we've got to be like, if you're making dietary changes and stuff, it's really important to like stay on track. And the reason being is your body doesn't have the reserves. Like what might be a little blip in the future when your system's regulated and your body's balanced, like you might be able to get away with something. Now, of course, if we get away with it, get away with it, get away with it, we revert backwards. But it's very different than when you're at the beginning of your journey. And it's because the body doesn't have what it needs to then be able to sustain forward. And so every little thing, becomes an irritant. It's like let's say you've had a really bad day at work and you come home and your child's whining. You may find that you don't have the wherewithal to not, flip out. Whereas if you had a wonderful day and everything was wonderful and your child starts whining, it's like, oh, honey, what else can I do? How else can I help you? Right? It's
Right.
really different because of the capacity that we have to be able to, deal with whatever it is.
My
So,
clients, when they come and they're not in a good place, they already know. And my question back to them is, what did you have for breakfast?
yep.
That's it.
Yes.
What did you have for breakfast? Because you didn't set yourself up to win.
Right. 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 I love that. So this all comes back to the foundation is what I hear you saying. It comes back to the foundations of, what it is to have your body in balance, both physically, emotionally, all of those brought together, and then in alignment with your own design.
Yes. Yes. And I want to add that the more we are struggling,
Hmm.
the more important it is, number one, to not isolate yourself,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? To find safety, because there's so much more that you can assess, you can reach with safety and being in community with other women.
Yes.
And then making sure that you are making an attempt to put some protein and healthy fats in your body, because we're all experiencing life differently, and grief is a real deal, and there's no right or wrong way to process that. But
Right.
it could just be a little easier by making sure that you're hydrated and that you're putting, I mean, I'm not saying have full meals, but if like that one meal that you're having has protein, has healthy fats, then we know that it is there to give you nutrition, that you're not going to be malnourished.
Right, right, right. I love that. This was just such a wonderful talk. I think we got people's brains buzzing on different topics and different things to look at and really begin to consider for their lives. So I want to ask you a couple things. First, I want to have you share with us how people can learn more about your work and what you do. How can they find you? I know it'll be in the show notes, but for those who are just listening.
Instagram is my favorite just because it's so easy to get in and get out. I'm not a big social media person, but that's my favorite place. UHKARE, it is basically my name in phonetics. Akary Breathwork,
Uh-huh.
Instagram. And then my website allows you to download your human design chart. There is a free general 12-page report that you can download there. It is quantum human design, which is not traditional human design, because we're vocabulary, words matter. And so the quantum human design gives us much more empowered language so that we can move forward. And I'll give you an example. Generators in traditional human design are considered the slaves of the world.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
because we commit to something, and regardless of whether we're happy or not, we're going to do it.
Yes.
We don't quit soon enough, or we quit too soon. Like that's the conundrum. Through quantum human design, we're called the alchemists. We're here to create, to build, and to master the work that we love.
I love that.
Yeah, and you can find me on uhkare.com.
I love that. So I think everyone should definitely go there, get a copy of your human design, read your report, get some guidance and support, reach out so that you can understand better all about it. And tell me, I always like to ask this question before we complete our show. What are 1 to 3 things, like actionable items, that someone listening can begin to take that will make a difference in their lives?
The number one is eat breakfast. Get some protein, some healthy
Yep.
fats in your body. go outside, get some vitamin D. There's a free app called D Minder that can measure the vitamin D availability in your area. And during, certain times of the year, we have less. So it's always nice to know when you can go outside and maximize that vitamin D
Love
consumption.
it. Yes.
And then the third one is just learn how to connect to your heart. Learn how to connect to your heart. It'll make a difference for you.
Yeah. I love that. Well, again, thank you so much for being here and being with us and sharing this conversation and for the difference that you make in the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Dr. D reminding you to tune into your body, connect with what matters, and embrace the journey to true wellness. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to redefine their health. Be sure to grab a copy of the True Wellness Checklist right in the show notes. Let's keep redefining wellness and empowering change together. See you for the next episode.